Hi. Today we're going to talk about something or someone. It's probably been hashed around a little bit, but here's my point. It puzzles me that a growing number of people think that it's irrational to believe in God. Today, briefly, I'm going to make the case that the real irrationality is to believe that God does not exist. To say it more simply, it is highly reasonable and rational, same thing, to know that God must exist in terms of, that we're going to talk about today, something. Does everything come from something or someone? In short, if we don't believe in God, then we have to attribute all things, including ourselves, to something. We just came from something rather than from someone. All right, that's where we're headed here. So let me start with an opening argument, I guess. There are basically three worldviews in the world. Three ways of looking at our existence and the universe itself. The first one would be materialism. And that's kind of the growing consensus among highly educated people, I suppose. And the idea of that, of course, is that nothing exists except matter. So if that's the case, you can't look to any other source for anything. Everything has to come from the scientific laws that encompass matter, what matter does. Now, there's no purpose in that, of course. Matter doesn't have a will. Matter doesn't have intelligence. It just does what it's sort of, you can't even say program, it just happens to do. And so everything has to be attributed to that if materialism is true. Now, there's another extreme, of course, in the world today. That would be pantheism. So you have materialism or naturalism, basically the same thing. And then pantheism. Pan means all, theism, God. So the other extreme would be nothing exists except God. And of course, here's where you come to the Hindu worldview. And of course, that worldview, pantheism, nothing exists except God, that means exactly the opposite, that everything has to be attributed. And we wouldn't say the same kind of God that we're talking about in theism or certainly in Christianity. But everything has to be attributed. It's part of what they would call the Brahman or the oneness of all things. So it's immaterial. On that view, everything that seems to be material, physical, is an illusion. Now, get this. This is really, I hope you get this. On materialism, everything that seems to be immaterial is an illusion. So that means, let's just take our own human existence here, our human experience. Personhood, consciousness, free will, our ability to cause things to happen, all those things, our ability to reason even, those are immaterial sounding for sure. How much does the thought weigh? But on materialism, all those things are an illusion. That means that our human experience, what it means to be a human being, is just an illusion. Interestingly, pantheism would say the same thing, but from a different starting point. Isn't it amazing how both worldviews want to eliminate us? On pantheism, nothing exists except God. So that means the oneness of all things. So my individuality is a myth. They call it the Maya. And so you have kind of coming from totally different worldviews, the same outcome, which is that we don't exist at all. Everything's an illusion. The third worldview is dualism. And dualism is what I think is the worldview. It just means, there's some things, but there's also some ones. There are obviously material things, physical things, matter, but there's also an immaterial, a metaphysical reality. And my point is this, that's exactly how we live. Everyone lives as if both are true. Let's take, for example, a staunch materialist. Nothing exists except matter. That means he is just a biological robot. His children are just biological robots. They just randomly exist, and there's no meaning or purpose for them, but they don't live that way. Think about this. We use words all the time, and I'm alluding here to C.S. Lewis. We use words that just scream to the idea that there's an immaterial reality. For example, if we are human agents and we can cause things, we have free will. By the way, if we have free will, that also means we are responsible. We could have done otherwise. And that's how we talk. Would you please do this for me? Well, that's meaningless if he's determined to do one thing or another anyway. Justice is a prevalent word today, and it should be. But justice is meaningless if there's no responsibility to do right as opposed to doing the wrong thing. All those things are meaningless on a materialistic worldview, and most materialists will agree with that. Right and wrong. That's not right. Well, what are you saying when you say that? You say you should have done something else. You should have done the right thing. That what you did was wrong. So my point is that we cannot help, as human beings, we cannot help to live as if there are true someones, persons. We're someone. I'm someone, not something. I have something about me. I have physical aspects and attributes about me, but I am in my essence a someone, not a something, and you think the same thing. You live that way. You can't help it. All right, so we've got two ideas here. One is the three worldviews, and the other would be someone or something. So now we're going to conjoin those two ideas and finish out here. And now we're going to talk about the most basic philosophical question ever. Why is there something, the universe? Why is there something instead of nothing? Why does anything exist? Well, let's go back to basics here. Let's talk about the universe itself. There are only one of two options. I mean, it's hard simply because we don't normally think and talk this way, but it's really not hard at all because we intuit all those things. Everything that exists is either temporary, it either started, had a beginning, or it has existed infinitely back in time. So let's say the universe. Why is there something rather than nothing? Well, the universe has either been here forever or it had a beginning. Now, we know scientifically today, at least I'm not sure we know, but I think that we think we know scientifically anyway that the universe had a beginning. Most people call it the Big Bang. I have a big problem with that. But here you have two problems. Absurdities to the point that you have problems. If you take the something worldview, nothing exists except matter, some things, then you have two absurd possibilities. If the universe has been here forever, that means that it would have taken an infinite number of days to get to this day. Put another way, it would have taken an infinite number of causes and effects to get to this particular effect, which is the accumulation of all those things. But infinity cannot be actualized. You can't hold it. And so we would have never gotten to this day if it took an infinite number of days from eternity past to get here. You can't do that. You can't actualize all the marbles. And if you have an infinite number of marbles, how many would you have? Well, there's always more. And so there would always be more days between whatever day you want to pick in the past and this day. This day can't exist. This effect of all the previous infinite number of causes. It's called an infinite regress. And it doesn't exist. It can't happen. It's an absurdity. So from a philosophical standpoint, as well as a biblical standpoint, as well as a scientific standpoint, we know that the universe is temporary. It started. They had a beginning. Now we run to, so we got to get there, but now we run to an equally absurd problem. Before the universe, if there's no God, what? Well, it can't be the universe. I mean, it's not hard to understand that the universe cannot create itself. It would have to exist before it existed. You say, well, that sounds stupid. That's because it is stupid. You can't have a nothing to bring something and everything else into its existence. It's an absurdity. Even though there are some philosophers and maybe some scientists who want to embrace that. No, we just came from nothing, for nothing, by no reason. Well, okay, if you want to embrace that, I can't change your mind perhaps. So number one, there's no infinite regress, so time can't be eternal. Number two, you can't come from nothing to everything, so there has to be something supernatural. If the universe is everything natural, then whatever created, caused the universe must be, number one, eternal, outside of time, because time began when the universe began. And that's the whole idea. Time has to begin. And so, number one, you can't have an infinite regress. Number two, you can't come from nothing to everything else. So you have to have, and by the way, every theistic argument for the existence of God kind of comes back to this idea of an eternal first cause for everything else. And I think that's inescapable. So the summary here is, is that eternal first cause something or someone? That's what it boils down to. And why should it be strange for us to think, of course it's someone? We have someones. If you're watching this video, you don't think, well, boy, something happened. That's amazing. That's just a random video that popped. No, somebody made it. Somebody on purpose made it. Might be a bad video, but we made it on purpose. And we do that all the time. It's not strange for us to think someones do a lot of things. We don't do everything. Sometimes things happen by accident. Sometimes things happen randomly. And so that's why we have a dualistic worldview. Yes, there are some ones, and yes, there are some things, and they intertwine, and it's an amazing world we live in, isn't it? Something does not work. Something won't work as an eternal first cause, because then you run into the infinite regress of causes and effects. You have to have an eternal, unchanging someone that brings the universe into existence by sheer force of will. And that's what Christians have said all along. It is creation out of nothing else. God is the creator. And I think that's, sure, I think it is an immovable, impassable, irrefutable argument. Let's give it one more question here, and this is because this always comes up. Okay, if God made everything, who made God? That's a silly question. I just have to say, all my kids asked that when they were 5 or 6 years old. Hey, God, hey, Dad, if God made everything, who made God? Well, if you just embrace the arguments that we've just made, then we understand this is a silly question. Can an eternal person have a cause? If he's the first cause, and must of necessity, reasonably, rationally, there must be an eternal first cause. Well, whatever the eternal first cause is, it can't be cause. Otherwise, it would not be first. There are a lot of other arguments that entail the same argument here that we can do later in other videos. But for now, let's just recap. You can't get something from nothing. So whatever the universe came from has to be something, but it cannot be physical because the universe is everything physical. And so it's not a big stretch. It's not weird for us to say, no, it must be something, or not something, but someone that caused this. God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth on purpose, with purpose, and that's how we live. We are someone's made in the image of God. That's why we have personhood, consciousness, and awareness of ourselves and our surrounding. That's why we have the ability to cause things or not. We don't have unlimited free will, for sure. I can't fly. But we have free will within the parameters that we have. We still have the ability to cause things to happen. And we're responsible. And we know that. We know that. So anyway, I hope this was helpful to you. We'll make some addendums onto this a little later. Thanks for watching.